Casey here from the blog Don't Pin That about the bad ideas of Pinterest. Today we're going to be addressing a very common old wives' tale that gets pinned quite a lot on Pinterest as well as other life hack websites. The theory is that by taking a simple wooden spoon and placing it on top of a pot of boiling water, that you can essentially prevent the water from boiling over. Now, that's not true, which is why we're doing the video today. What we are going to do, however, is talk about the science behind why it doesn't work, as well as a couple of things you can actually do to prevent a pan from boiling over. Now, why it doesn't work is as simple as what you're boiling. If you put a pot of just water on a stove and turn it up to high, it doesn't boil over. It boils away, but it doesn't boil over. The thing is, most of the time when you're boiling food, it tends to have a high starch content. Think potatoes or pasta. That starch gets into the water and acts essentially as a glue, causing the boiling water bubbles to form and stay and stick. And they go up and they go out. A wooden spoon is not enough to break the sticky surface tension that high starch foods like pasta cause. It's just not going to work. Now, the best way of preventing a pot from boiling over, use a bigger pot. If you use a bigger pot, it takes way more for it to boil over. Unfortunately, if you're anything like me, this is the extent of my kitchen. Behind the camera is my sink. It's less than 90 square feet. This is the only big pan I have. If I have to cook a big dinner, it's probably being used for something else. So what if I need to boil a small amount of pasta or some potatoes? I'm going to reach for a smaller pan because that's all I have the space for. There are ways you can boil pasta without having it boil over, and that's what we're going to show today. I'm going to do equal amounts of pasta with equal amounts of water, demonstrate how a spoon does not actually prevent it from boiling over, and show 2 or 3 different methods that you can actually use in order to prevent it from boiling over. So in this pan, we are going to demonstrate why the wooden spoon doesn't work. Now, each experiment is going to have the exact same. There's 2 cups of pasta, 6 cups of water. It's going to be cranked up to high, and now we just have to wait for it to start boiling. Starting the steam. Now, I know that food people say, let the water come to a boil, then add the pasta, put it in a big pan. But let's get real here. Like, your kids want mac and cheese and you haven't done the dishes and it comes from a box, and not everybody cares enough to really follow the instructions on the back of a 99-cent box of pasta. So usually when I cook pasta, I do put the pasta and water in and then crank it up to high, and I have a tendency to get distracted and walk away. I have had pots boil over more times than I would like to admit, which leaves my glass top really dirty. And in fact, I'm going to be testing another pin quite soon about the best ways of cleaning your glass top stove. So hopefully this boils over and it will help me have something more to clean off. Let that stir. That is really coming to a boil here really soon. So I think I'm just going to stand back and let it go. Oh no, what's that? It didn't prevent it from boiling over. Why aren't you working? I knew it wasn't going to work. Okay, let me turn this off and clean this mess up, and I will show you a couple of ways you can prevent this from happening. Now this is the second batch, and it's starting to come to a boil. There is a couple different ways that you can prevent this from boiling over. I think everyone will agree that a larger pot is the best way to go about that, but if you don't have one, it's not available at the moment, you don't have space for one, there are ways of cooking starchy foods in a smaller pot and not have them boil over. Stirring does work. The problem is not a lot of people want to just stand there and stir pasta for 10 to 15 minutes waiting for it to cook. There's a lot of things you can do in that time. The best way, the absolute best way of preventing pasta from boiling over is to simply turn it down. Turning the heat down to about a medium heat so that it's little bubbles, there's a little bit of the surface is starting to just bubble and roll without it forming large bubbles, because it's the large, starchy, sticky bubbles that end up building up and pouring over. If you keep it as just a gentle simmering heat, it won't boil over. It takes a little bit longer, sure, it's not cranked up to high, but it won't boil over. Now, there is another way, and this, I'm not endorsing this item, it's not a sponsored post, but I'm sure some of you have seen things like this in the kitchen supply store, even on Pinterest. And it's a very simple device that you simply place on top of the pan. You can crank it up to high, and as it starts to boil, it has these little vents, and it's going to build up here in just a moment. And once it does start boiling over, because it will, it fills the top, but it will not go over the edges. So you can cook things like pasta or potatoes on a very high heat without having to worry about it boiling over. Also really great if you do things like spaghetti sauce or you're frying something, because it prevents it from splattering. Now, do you need this? No. You don't need one of these. Truly the best method of preventing pasta from boiling over is to simply turn the heat down. That's it. That's all it takes. And by simply turning it down, you can prevent it from boiling over. Well, that's about it. Let us know what you think. Leave comments for us on Facebook, on Twitter, on the blog. And as always, we are in desperate need of bad pins and bad ideas. So if you find something, let us know.